Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 26th January 2018. The first article, Supreme Court to hear plea against states Karni Sena. You know that the Supreme Court of India has upheld the right for freedom of creative expression and lifted the ban imposed by various states on Padmavat movie. In spite of this, states failed to provide for adequate protection against destruction of property in Gujarat and also Rajasthan. So in these circumstances, there is a judgment of the Supreme Court, that is Rangarajan versus Jagjeevan Ram case. What Supreme Court stated is, violence cannot be a reason for banning of a particular movie. So again remember, the freedom of creative expression is vital for complete development of an individual, and also these freedoms are given to individual, not to the communities. And second aspect, the social morality and constitutional morality, if we see, we need to be driven by the constitutional morality. The power of the mob shall not dictate the terms to the constitutional governance in the country that will be seen as the weakness of the government. So in this context, Supreme Court may initiate contempt orders on these particular states. Probably that can be the course of action. India ASEAN ties to focus on freedom of navigation. You know that freedom of navigation is a big issue with regard to South China Sea is concerned. So in this context, ASEAN leaders and India together have clearly stated that they are going to develop a joint mechanism for this particular freedom of navigation. So how China would have responded to this? Surprisingly, China has welcomed the relations between India and ASEAN. But China don't feel any threat as of now from India for the reason that China-ASEAN trade is around $1 trillion. India-ASEAN trade is not even close to $70 billion. So in these circumstances, there is nothing for the China to fear about the growing relations between India and ASEAN. That's how it feels it as. Padma Vibhushan for Ilayaraja. So understand, Padma awards are not titles. These are the recognition of the merit by the state. And individuals who gain these awards, who get these awards, cannot display them as titles. That's what is the point we need to remember. And Supreme Court has clearly given its judgments in this regard. Harsh language to be a cognizable offence. This news is particular to Telangana. Telangana government is going to make harsh language a punishable offence. Obviously, what is harsh? It varies from one culture to the other culture. Probably what is considered as smooth in my culture may be a harsh to someone in the other culture. So I have this particular example. For me, father means Bap. So that's why when I initially entered into Delhi, so who said you this? Aapka Bap. That's what I said with my minimal Hindi knowledge. Then that has infuriated the person other side. So it is lack of understanding of the culture that is what made me to speak that way. So if harsh language, a political criticism can be a harsh language, so how it will be deciphered? Is it providing for arbitrariness for the police to act is a major question. The grounding of Air India. So with regard to this, we have to understand the functioning of public sector undertakings. So India has started a journey with mixed economy. And this has got a peculiar advantages to India. That is, if all the private sector is nationalized, the minimal resources which are available with the government, they will be diverted for buying those resources. So that's why we have experimented with private sector coexisting with public sector. But the commanding heights of the economy will be taken up by the public sector. And second aspect, it was a situational necessity as the capital was not sufficiently available with the private sector. So our generation has grew up knowing that the public sector is failing. But till 1960s, public sector was profitable in India. It was professionally managed with little political interference. And Indian economic growth was better than Chinese economic growth. Air India had great profits till 1962, 63 I think. But later, slowly its profits started declining by 1970s. The profits are turned into losses. So in this scenario, what made the difference in 1970s? The political climate has changed in the country. So then public sector undertakings slowly have become the instruments of politics. So populism has taken central stage. The socialism is turned into something called freebies. So it is been remarkably told as welfare. So now, 1970s, most of the public sector undertakings have turned into losses. 1990s, their ill health was exposed at one single go by liberalization. Now, there are loss-making PSUs. Do we need to make them survive with the taxpayers' money? Or we need to give them a euthanasia? Or do we need to privatize them? These are the questions before us. So, how can we say it as? We can use public interest as a basis. To what extent continuation of the PSU is serving the public interest? So, is it a bleed on the finances of the government? If you take railways and airlines, so Air India, probably it can be privatized because there are many agencies providing the services and competition is expected to bring in efficiency and quality of services. But railways, they are a necessary utility for billions of poor. So in this context, the railways need to be strengthened in the public sector. So the only thing that has to guide privatization of public sector undertakings is the public interest, scope of its utility for the common man. That's what is the essence of this article is. Held by the Bob. This is about Padmavat release and vandalism by Karnisena. Remember one thing, a small fringe group cannot put a nation and the state for ransom. So in this context, the protection of the rights and constitutional governance in the country is the responsibility of the state. If the state fails to do so, the very social contract between the state and the citizen is bound to fail. What is this social contract? The state is meant to protect liberties, life, and the property of the citizen. And citizen will compromise on his autonomy and pay the taxes to the state for doing these functions. When the state is failing to offer these protections, obviously that leads to the question, is the state and its existence is legitimate? Reading the Constitution. So, constitutional values are evolved and enacted in India through deliberations. So, there are two worldviews in the Constitution. One is uniformity is essential for unity, and the other is diversity is necessary for unity. So, what shall we go with? Our Constitution went with diversity leading to unity. And it is a pragmatism if we consider the diversity of the country as a whole. So, the constitutional values which uphold the human dignity, equality, liberty, balanced with social justice, need to be educated for all. And it has to come from the roots of the education. So now, whatever the slur coming on, changing the constitution, it has to be considered as an superficial argument, or it need not worth a discussion. That's what this article's essence is. Should euthanasia be allowed? So euthanasia or mercy killing, there are two types in it. One is passive euthanasia and active euthanasia. Some countries across the world are allowing it for terminally ill patients. And for this, advanced directives are necessary. Or living will we call it as. Advanced directives or living will are necessary. It means a person in his sound mind will write his will on his future or on his days, terminal days, how he has to be treated. That is what we call it as living will. Passive euthanasia, it means that not prolonging the life of an individual through artificial means. It means if a person is on a life support, removing this life support for this person to take a natural course. That is what is called as passive euthanasia. Active euthanasia involves some active intervention to end the life. So in Aruna Shanbhag case, passive euthanasia was allowed, was stated by the as stated by the Supreme Court, can be allowed in India, but there is no scope for active euthanasia. And second is, implementation of this passive euthanasia need to be certified by a doctor. A team of doctors treated the patient, and it is under the supervision of the High Court. But in the case of active euthanasia, implementing it becomes very difficult and it is prone for abuse. The bigger question it says is, right to life involves right to life with dignity. So dignity means free from pain, free from pressure, free from the fear. So in these circumstances, pain, fear of death, so all these is taking away the dignity of individual away from him because of the disease. So that's why right to life shall involve a choice, right to choice, which in turn shall involve right to death. So this is what the argument of the people supporting euthanasia. And then let us see it from the perspective of the medical profession. It is a huge moral burden on the doctors to allow for or to take up active euthanasia. It may interfere with many of the religious beliefs of the caregivers. And second aspect to it is, if active euthanasia is allowed, then obviously the life will lose its respect. And second, the people who are not productive probably will be put to death. That is a measure of abuse. So these are the arguments over here. Now, CJI meets senior judges and no breakthrough yet. Congress yet to decide on proposal to impeach CJI. Communist Party, Marxists, they have brought in this proposal to impeach Chief Justice of India, Justice Deepak Mishra. So let's take how a judge can be impeached. A motion has to be introduced in the parliament, which has to be backed by 100 MPs in Lok Sabha. If it is in Rajya Sabha, 50 MPs have to back it. Then the motion has to be admitted by the chair. And after that, Judges Inquiry Act comes into picture. So now the matter has to be referred to the Supreme Court, and a committee will be constituted by the Supreme Court with 3 judges. And this committee will decide either the person has did anything wrong or not. Is he involved with any misconduct or not? And this misconduct is not defined. It is up to the committee to decide on it. And based on the report of the committee, if it is stated yes, misconduct was there, then that will be put for voting. If not, the motion will die then and there itself. Don't think that removal of a judge is just a parliamentary activity. Removal of a judge also involves judiciary through Judges Inquiry Act. That's how we can put it as. Thank you very much. And in the last page notes is given to you. It will be posted to atlaix.in/CivilsPrep. And by tomorrow you are getting your new CivilsPrep website. I'll make sure that the notes is posted by 10 o'clock in the morning every day. Thank you very much and all the best.